They'll get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It, Restoration.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Service Guys podcast. I'm your co-host, Ruel Abadam, and on the other line, we have our service professional, Lonnie Beecham. Hi, Lonnie. How's it going?
Going very well. I'm excited to talk to our guest today.
Yeah. Why don't you kick off the guest intro for us?
Okay. Today we have a friend of mine. She's an admin of a very important Facebook group. And it's not open to everybody, so don't go clamoring to try to join this group. This group is called, well, actually, Sarah, what is it called again? I know I see it pop up every day.
Repeatedly, probably. It's Military Housing.
You cut out Military Advocacy.
Advocacy.
Hey, Ruel, I think we need to cut this part out. Sarah, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Never heard a word you said.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah. You want to just start and then we'll edit that?
Yes,
yeah, we'll edit that out. If you could just want to say it again.
Okay. It's called the Military Housing Advocacy Network. And we're a group of like 3,400 military families experiencing housing issues and privatized military homes.
Well, and how Sarah and I met is about a year ago, I would say. There was a couple ladies I listened to, as my friends know this about me. I'm a podcast junkie, and I was listening to a Soft Rep radio podcast. It's it's a military-based podcast, geared more to the special operations, special forces guys, because we all like those war stories from the Navy SEALs and that sort of thing. And there was a part of me that, I almost enlisted in the Marines. I really wished I would have, but I was dating my wife, and she's still my wife 20-some years later. So I chose not to go that route, but I've always had an affinity for the service people. So I was listening to this podcast, and these ladies were talking about mold and asbestos and lead and just the housing atrocities that the service families are living in. And so I just started clicking around, asked to join, and the admin said, "Hey, I see you're. In fact, I think it was you or Kristen.
I think it was me or Rachel. One of us.
Yeah, Rachel. Yeah. One of you is like, hey, I see, you're in the business, we're not here to, solicit business. I'm like, oh no, I'm just here to learn and add my 2 cents. And so long story short, they put me into the group, and they told me under no circumstances am I to solicit business. And I said, I totally appreciate, I'm just trying to give back. But at the same time, if I get called into Fort Leonard Wood or one of these bases, then obviously if there's I am a proprietor, so, but at the same time, mold, I understand, is a huge learning curve for even guys in the business, let alone a family with their spouse overseas. And so here we are. So I want to turn this over to, at this point, I'd like to learn more about Sarah and how she came to get involved with this and what we can do to help and go from there. So there you go, Sarah. How's that for a introduction?
It was a great introduction. It was a really good decision to add you to. You're on there answering question after question after question, because there's new service members that come forward and their spouses every day that found something, and they're trying to understand the mold or asbestos or lead or whatever they have. But I got involved at Fort Sill. We lived in an old 1911 home. There's a lot of lead-based paint issues and basement flooded, and we just weren't getting. Yeah,
where's Fort Sill?
Oklahoma.
Oh, okay. You gotta. I have an affinity, and I know Ruel does as well. But when you say Fort Polk, Fort Hood, unless it's made the news, we don't know where some of these places are.
Where they are.
So.
No. It is in the desert, pretty much, of Oklahoma. It's on the plains. It's a super hot summer. It was just an old home And the maintenance just floored me. I just couldn't imagine that it was that bad. And so we moved.
But you get free housing.
No, that's the thing. Everyone, you get free housing, It's like we get an allowance for housing that's almost like part of my husband's compensation package. So if he's been in the Army for 12 years at this rank, he gets this much money to either go rent a house off the installation or take whatever house they decide to give them or think is appropriate on the installation. So, and it's different for different areas.
And I'm sure different ranks and that sort of thing. But if you get a free house given to you on base, I mean, is it truly free or do you still pay rent?
You still pay rent. So instead of, the only reason people think it's free is so like on my husband's, say, paycheck stub, you'll see that he got the money, but then the money would directly come out almost like a child support payment would come out. It directly comes out of an allotment if you live on an installation and goes to a private company that manages the military housing. But if we live off the installations, it's out in like a regular civilian community close by, he would just get that amount deposited into his bank account with his paycheck.
So it would be on top of his paycheck, then that money would be deposited. So if rent was $1,500 a month, let's say rent's $1,500 a month, would he get $1,500 a month or would he get $1,000? Or, I mean, kind of break that down a little bit. What's that mean?
So he would get, so if we're at West Point, for the rank that he is, he gets $2,800. So if we go rent a one-bedroom apartment and decide to live in a one-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town and spend $900, then he would get to pocket the rest of the money.
Okay.
Or if we go pick out a nice house that's $3,400, he would have to use, we would pay more than what we were getting.
Okay.
You have that option.
So it's subsidized.
But on installation, it's all one rate. Doesn't matter if you're in 1,200 square feet or 4,200 square feet. Depending on what they have, you pay your full amount for your BH.
Okay. BH. Okay.
Yep.
See, and that's, and I'll just tell you from a civilian's point of view in this group, I see BH and military, no matter which branch, is filled with the acronyms. I'm like, I don't know BH. I don't know. I can't even tell you because it just glosses over my head. I just like, it just doesn't mean anything to me. But when it's lead, asbestos, or mold, or water, or whatever, that I zero in on. I don't know what any of these other acronyms mean.
Would BH be base housing?
We use a lot. What?
Does BH stand for base housing?
It's basic housing allowance.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So it's like I said, it varies. So like if we were in Texas where the cost of living is cheaper, we would get $1,800. But you move to New York and it's $3,000.
Okay. So how you spend that is up to you. If you want to pocket money and live cheap, 1 or 2 bedrooms with triplets, you can do that. Or if you get something adequate are they all the same sex? Or are they a mixture of boys and girls?
They are identical twin girls and extra fraternal brothers. So 2 girls and a boy. Okay.
So Ruel, Sarah has triplets. So imagine that when she's talking about living on base or off base or, the accommodations. You have 3 kids. I have 2 kids. I couldn't imagine living in a 900 or 1,000 square foot house with my family of 4, and she has a family of 5. So do you.
And a dog and a cat and a fish and a gerbil.
And a fish. That's why you make the decision a lot of times to live on the installation, because out in town right now, what I could get for that amount of money, I would legitimately get a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice place. But if I live on the installation, there's 3,000 square feet and 4 bedrooms.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, where I live, Camp Roberts here in in Northern California. It used to be historically, I guess, a facility for the Seabees, Navy, and then it converted over to Army. It's a garrison, but the housing there looks fantastic. So I can imagine, if you can get it on base, you get more bang for your buck, I guess. And if you were to go off base, good luck trying to find something that's just as big. Yeah.
It depends where you're at. Sometimes it goes further. Sometimes you can't find anything like you're talking about. You're just kind of forced to take what you get on the installation. And sometimes it's big and sometimes it's not. And you just never know. Depends where you go.
So you were telling us you were at Fort Sill?
Mm-hmm.
In a home built 1911 with water in the crawl space.
Water in the basement.
Basement, okay.
I didn't know anything about mold at the time. I just kind of ignored that part of it. But I knew about lead-based paint. And we got addendums to sign and things like that. And it was chipping everywhere. So I kind of threw a fit about that. But really, it was so bad there because any just simple work order you would call in, it was like pulling teeth to get them to fix the simplest of work orders. And they seem to always be Band-Aid fixes.
Oh, and the stuff I'm seeing in the group, it's atrocious. And if you've got standing water in your basement and you got some flunky showing up with a work order, like, I'm here to spray something, it's like, what on earth? I'm not kidding. What I see in this group makes me want to cry, actually, because I'm sitting there. Sarah, what I envision, I don't know everybody. I know we're kind of in Iraq and all those countries, but we're kind of not. I know some people are still there, but they're kind of not, but whether you're doing your tour in South Korea or Germany or wherever, I'm sitting there thinking of a spouse that's leaving their family to deal with what you and I are talking about today. And being away from your family is already stressful enough. You're living on post or, on base or whatever, wherever you're stationed, and your family's at home and they're dealing with, I have seen raw sewage videos in people's basements. I have seen, ceilings collapse. I've seen water running down a wall. I've seen bubbles of paint. And this is what our servicemen and women are living in. And I'm sitting there thinking that Section 8 housing that has, in my town, I've put bids in and I've had them for years and we got paid to go and paint and stuff like that. But I'm sitting there thinking where I'm in Missouri, Sarah. So, my Section 8 housing is better than what I'm seeing our servicemen and women living in with their kids. And they're supposed to be fighting for our country and all the hoorah and stuff like that. And it's like, how can you perform as a soldier overseas with your family at home, dealing with cockroaches, bottoms of cabinets in their kitchen falling out? This is a nightmare, Ruel. I'm not joking. This is scary.
Well,
this
their
is
kids
sad.
are getting sick too. I mean,
kids are sick. Rashes
point,
on their
and
face.
Then you see
rashes.
That's awful.
Lung
Asthma.
biopsies.
And this is what our servicemen are dealing with.
That is not right.
I mean, like, they could have taken care of it. See, that's the most frustrating thing. When you start talking to these spouses that come forward and ask you for advice and what to do, you usually find out that, the roof's been leaking for a year. I've reported this 4 or 5 times. They've let it sit. The previous residents moved out because they had mold and then they painted it over and moved someone back in. So it's not just a freak accident. It's almost, I don't know how you would put it. They could have prevented it from happening, but it was shoddy upkeep and shoddy maintenance. And here we are living in a house with cross-contamination of mold, all around the vents. And then they're refusing to fix it appropriately.
And it's housing that's on base?
About 20 years ago, the military decided they couldn't or didn't.
I was just going to ask you this. When did they go private business?
they really kicked it off around 1996. And it took them a while to privatize it all. And they thought that they would save, millions and millions of dollars by, bidding these out to other companies on a 50-year lease to manage and do the upkeep, take the DAA directly from the
lease
members. It's a 50-year lease.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So there's about 5 big companies that have multiple installations on 50-year leases.
And Sarah, I know of like Corvallis or I don't know how to say that, Belfour, Betty, and Hunt. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 that I see in the group the most.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the other 2 are Michael's
and Lynne? No, they're just smaller. They're still not good.
So instead of having 1,000 houses on one base, they might have 100?
No, more like they just don't have as many. So Balfour Beatty has, 14 Army installations where they would only have like 2 or 3.
Break it down for me, Sarah. REN?
So they have, the way it works, so they went into, let's say, Fort Sill in Oklahoma, and Balfour Beatty took that one. Then Balfour Beatty took 5 other Army installations, but then Michael only went in and took 1. So they have the entire installation is all of their homes typically. There's a few instances where there's 2 companies like at JB Charleston, but then it just depends. They're just smaller.
Okay. I don't see their names, but I see those 3 that I mentioned so much that they're top of mind for me. And so Ruel, picture this. You got a military base subbing out housing to a private company. Do you see any conflict and interest in that?
Just a little bit.
And what I'm getting at, as a business, I am a for-profit business. My business pays for my daughter's dance lessons and braces and rent, my mortgage and, that sort of thing. So I get the business side of it. But when you get a flunky guy showing up and they're telling them, oh, I'll just spray it and you're good. But I've seen pictures with mold growing 8 feet up the wall and they're going to spray and wipe that out. And I'm sitting there as a professional, I'm sitting there thinking, if you're seeing this on the outside, what's on the inside of the wall? That there's no amount of spray, there's no amount of foo-foo that's going to make that disappear. But Sarah, I'm going to sidetrack here for a minute, okay?
Okay.
Do you know how many times I get it? I've rented in my life, and I know the landlord has to fix everything. But do you know how many times I see in this group, if somebody went and bought a $300 residential dehumidifier, do you know how many times I've wanted to say, just go buy a freaking dehumidifier and solve your problems? So much of what I see whenever I can tell, okay, so we were talking about our photos, I get messaged daily or weekly at least, okay? And not all the photos show up that well. But 99% of the time, what I see is if you actually ran just a dehumidifier that you own, that would solve 99% of the Facebook problems that I see. I don't know how to say that without looking like a jerk, but it's like, I get it. You're renting a house, but yet your family's health and safety and security is worth $300.
That's kind of the thing, though. Sometimes, like, you'll see some of the bathroom pictures to where there's no ventilation in those bathrooms. But then what I end up finding out when I delve deeper into that, and I found this on several installations, that the HVACs aren't properly sized for the homes, is what it seems like.
And I can tell you that's 99% of every residential HVAC system. Almost every one of them. So what that means to you, Ruel, is if you set you're really hot and you set your thermostat at 64 and it's 79 degrees in your house, it'll get to 64 really fast, but it doesn't pull out enough humidity to keep the home in a safe level, which is 30 to 50% is normal indoor humidity levels. Anything over 60% is starting to absorb moisture. So even though you may not have a wet, soggy roof leak or basement filled with sewage or whatever, just when it's 60% in there, it might be 64 degrees, but it's still too humid. So your ceilings are starting to absorb water and moisture and mold.
And then there's a roof leak, something like that. Another water intrusion problem happens, and then it just, the whole house at times grows mold.
Right. And then they sent a guy over to literally, Ruel, to spray, just to spray, and I call it foo-foo. I mean, I got chemicals that quote unquote kill mold. But is it the right, proper way? No, not at all. So Sarah, here's a tidbit for you that you may or may not know. I know you're deep into this, and I want to learn more about what you're doing on the advocacy side. But did you know that 75% of the mold spores that are sporulated, which is mold equivalent of male ejaculation, they call it sporulation, 75% of those mold spores, when they're sporulated out, is already quote unquote dead. Meaning at all the right. What's that?
I think that makes me actually feel a little better.
Well, so I mean, in the optimal right conditions, 75% of those spores will never ever grow mold. Ever, never, ever, never, ever, never. They're already quote unquote dead from the moment they're released. 75% of them. Now, when you got 25% of a million spores, that's a big number. So we're still talking, I mean, it should make you feel some better, but when you see these posts in the group, people wanting to, hey, does concrobium, does vinegar water, does thyme oil, does whatever kill mold? 75%, 3/4 of the mold spores are already dead. There is no amount of killing. And when we go to training, I was really hoping that Craig was on here with us today, but I have sat through all the antimicrobial training courses. I have all the certifications that you can list with the IICRC. Anyway, they will tell you that that in mold remediation, I mean, it's literally, it's a fancy word for removal. Even dead mold spores are just as toxic and just as allergenic as a living mold spore. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with these people that want to quote unquote spray a foo-foo to kill the mold. There is no killing mold. It's just as toxic and just as allergenic as a living mold spore.
It's so hard to explain. I mean, understanding the IICRC standards, like once you've read through them, 2 or 3 times, you get it, you understand it. And then to try to get these families to explain to this maintenance tech why you need to cut this piece of drywall out and or call in an expert, it's every day, all day.
But then the private company is looking at, when you call a guy like me on, my Missouri mold remediation rates, I know this is a broad brush, but it's $5 to $15 a square foot to do mold remediation. Whenever I walk out of your house for a 1,000 square foot basement, to get rid of your mold, it's $5,000 to $15,000 to get rid of your mold. Whenever I walk out, I take all my equipment, take all my containment, take all my, mechanical filtration devices out and all that stuff, right? You are left with no carpet, no sheetrock, maybe some studs are cut out and replaced on the fly, that sort of thing. And then you got to put back all the sheetrock, carpet, drywall, vinyl, paint, baseboards, tack strip, yada, yada, yada. That's why these private companies are just trying to give you a Band-Aid, and they're hoping to pacify you and send you down the road and shut you up is what they're trying to do.
Well, and it's been 20 years, so now it's like push come to shove. How many times can you not fix the roof leak and not cut out this mold before, kids really get sick?
Right. And that's what pulls on my heartstrings. Because I'm a dad. I tell all my customers, I wake up as a dad and I go to bed as a dad. Everything I do in between, from retrieving dead possums to out of some crawl space to, dealing with mold or non-friable asbestos to water damage to whatever. Everything, I wake up as a dad and I go to bed as a dad. My girls are on my mind as I'm pulling that dead animal out of the crawl space or breathing in the mold and that sort of thing. So Sarah, I don't want to cut you off at all, but tell me about your advocacy. I mean, you keep talking about working with these families, and what's that look like for you? Do you get paid? I mean, how does this work?
No, so we are unfunded right now. We're in the process of acquiring funding. So we just lived in a horrible, horrible mold house at Randolph Air Force Base out with San Antonio, and I just fought and fought for the 16 months that we lived there, and I couldn't take it anymore. So it's all volunteer work. Typically, I volunteer, I don't know, usually about 25 hours a week with other organizations, but this has become my passion lately.
As it should be.
And so, we're kind of led by Darlena Brown. She has a great article on Reuters that explains her situation. Her son was forever changed due to lead exposure in a military home.
Due to what exposure?
So, yeah. Lead exposure.
Lead. Okay.
Lead poisoning. And so we've just kind of all banded together. We've advocated on the Hill in D.C. to get legislation to try to get the Army, Air Force, all the military service branches to be able to tell these companies and have more power.
And how's that going?
We have a resident Bill of Rights coming out. It's not the greatest. We've seen some change, and we do have legislators' ears, and some are more willing to help than others. But we're working in the right direction. I mean, it's a huge problem, so it'll take years and years to fix.
Well, it took 20 years to get broken. Do you think it'll take 20 years to get fixed?
If I had to estimate, I'd give it 10. I think we're at a 10-year thing to get this all cleaned up if we continue the momentum that we've had. But that's just a sheer guesstimation.
Okay. Gotcha. Man,
but I used to think we would never get it fixed, so there was no hope until the contract ran out. So that's actually an improvement.
Gotcha. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how fast to drive that train down through the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're having to explain mold and lead, all these things that, explaining it to a stay-at-home mom or, an infantry soldier that's become a garrison commander. I mean, it's going to take a while just education component on why this is bad down.
And Sarah, and here's the problem. I'm knee deep in this. I know a lot about mold. I can geek out on you. I can, bore you to tears on this stuff. But every day I'll see there's 3 million different mold spores. And I'm in Missouri, okay? So your mold spores that are more regional to West Point are different than Ruel's in the, San Francisco area. And, so whenever I see these people posting lab results and they're like, what is this? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I'm not in your neck of the woods. You know what I mean? When you got 3 million, I see the same 30, let's say, maybe 50, day in and day out. Aspergillus penicillium is very common across the board to every region. Stachybotrys is one of the black molds. Catonium and 6 or 8 other different ones are under the black mold umbrella. And I don't even know them all. And I'm trained, licensed, certified, all that stuff. So I can see as a stay-at-home mom where your primary focus is taking care of your 3 kids, keeping a house, taking care of a husband, being a wife, and all that sort of thing. I mean, this is going to take a long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they come in and tell you too. Like if you have a stay-at-home mom, she has a maintenance. Even a maintenance director sometimes will come in and say, "Oh no, this is fine. We'll spray it. It'll be okay." How many times has she told that before she doesn't believe it? How many times does she take her kid in with a asthma attack before she puts those 2 and 2 together?
Right. It doesn't take very long. Stay-at-home moms work way harder than any physical roofing job or any trades job, I guarantee you. In fact, when my wife travels for 5 days and I'm the stay-at-home parent with my daughters that are 13 and 15, I'm like, oh man, how do people do this day in and day out? You got to be everything to everybody at the same time and yet be available to take care of the sick one that, they break their ankle on recess or, it's like, and then to come home and think, is my house going to kill my kids?
Yep. Well, and then the bad thing about that is, so you come home, you figure out that your house is making you sick. By the time you've figured all this out, you're trying to get forward momentum. The military moves you to a different house.
Yeah.
You're across the country. So it's just, they kind of just wait you out too. And it's, you're unpacked, you've got people you get in a group, you've got people that are coming into their second or third bad house now. So they'll come in and look around and now they're knowing what to look for with the Facebook group because they see what everyone else is posting and they're connecting with people that live in their neighborhood about the issues.
And real, sorry to sidetrack you there, Sarah. So I have seen photos. I don't remember her name, and even if I did, I wouldn't out her. But at the same time, I've literally seen 3-inch crack in somebody's cinder block foundation wall. There's a 3-inch crack there. You can see daylight through it, and then these maintenance guys come in, and they're like, "Oh, that's fine. We'll spray foam it." It's like, spray foam buys you about 3 months of a Band-Aid, not a long term. That spray foam, I utilize a lot of spray foam. I utilize it for my 10 days of mold remediation, not for a long-term fix. And when it's exposed to weather and rain and sun and, insects and everything, it deteriorates fast. It's a Band-Aid. And then, so Sarah and the people that she works with, they literally have $10 an hour, $15 an hour maintenance guys coming in and they're like, well, my work order says I just need to spray foam this crack. I'm like, okay. So you spend, $6 on this can of spray foam. You spend, so you got $50 invested in it instead of just, putting $100 worth of grout mix together in a tumbler and fixing it right permanently. You give them a $6 Band-Aid. What is up with that?
It's exactly like you say too. That's pretty much how it runs with a lot of our fixes.
I was crawling through the Military Housing Advocacy Network Twitter account and just reading through and seeing pictures, and I'm like, Lonnie, I'm upset about the whole idea that our service men and women's families, while they're out serving the country, that families are having to live in poor conditions and encountering health problems or at risk of health problems. I'm going through the feed where someone wrote that they've got their discharge papers in hand, right? And they're going to be losing their insurance in several months. And, and what happens if you or someone in your family got sick because of the poor conditions of the housing, and then now you're gonna be discharged for whatever reason, and how are you gonna cover those costs of getting sick from poor conditions, things like that. Or you've served your country and you're back home, you're discharged, but not only are you having to deal with all these health issues and bad living conditions, you've also have post-traumatic stress and stuff going on because of all of your time in your career. So you're like stacked on both ends, right, of a bad situation, and it's not right. It's not right for our service families. Sorry, I
that's what breaks my heart.
I got upset.
We got honorable people trying to serve their country, take care of their families, do the right thing, and then this is what they live with. And that's why Sarah is on the phone with us.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the insurance piece. That's one of the big things that our group's advocating for is we need lifetime health coverage for our kids. If they've got sick in this military housing, and it was this house that made them sick, and they've got lifelong issues, I'm just not sure how that's, not the company's or the service branch's responsibility. So they've set up a hotline now. There's a hotline where if you've gotten sick in your house, you're supposed to register it.
Do you want to give that number? Do you have that number handy?
Yes. Let me get that number for you. I'll give it at the end of the podcast.
When you're hiring someone to clean your carpets, you're probably assuming that they're using better equipment and better cleaning solutions than you would. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Their equipment should heat the water to 200 degrees to ensure that your carpets are not only clean, but disinfected. Next time you hire someone to clean your carpet or tile, ask them how hot their water gets. If they don't know or it's less than 200 degrees, send them back and call me, Lonnie Beecham, with Restore It Restoration. I'll get your carpets done right and your life back to normal.
Okay. So what you're saying about lifetime health, issues, don't you have the VA? Isn't that the perfect free medical? I mean, that's part of our service guys' pay package, right? Lifetime medical. I mean, doesn't that take care of it?
Not for their children, and not if you got out after 20 years, then yes, you would have what you would call TRICARE for life. And you would go through that. But if you have a service member that was in for 7 years and got out, decided to pursue other things, their children wouldn't have that health care coverage for life unless they had retired in their 20 years or been medically retired. There's some certain instances. But
no kidding.
They just got fed up living in the house and got out. That's it right now.
And Sarah, you probably don't know this answer. What percentage would you guess of our servicemen just do their 4 or 5 years and get out versus lifers?
It's a great majority, I will say. I don't know the percentage, but it's a majority, I believe.
So put it in, I know you said, your husband's 12 years in. He's probably at 12 years, he's going to retire there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's back up. Yeah, he signs the dotted line. He's enlisting today, and that started out as a 4-year commitment, right? And my assumption is that 5 years. Okay, so my brother-in-law, he enlisted in the Navy at 33 years old, and yeah, he said it's 4 years enlisted, but you could be called back if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, basically, for 5 years. But, and that's the majority of the people. They're getting their college education. They're they're growing up. There's a million reasons why people are only doing 4 years, and that's my assumption that's probably 80 to 90% of them are the 4 or 5 years, and they're in and out and they're done, right?
Yeah, it's a majority.
Yeah. So let's back up in your family. So your family's sick, you got water in your basement, you got lead, you got asbestos, you got mold, and you have lifelong ailments for your kids and you and your husband possibly or whatever. If he only did his 4 or 5 years, you all would be SOL, right?
Yeah, there wouldn't. As of right now, there would be no insurance to cover. Yeah, there would be nothing. Unless we could... There's been some movement to change that, but as of right now, you would then have to go into litigation with the companies that hold the privatized 50-year contract.
And Ruel, so that like this Corvius CEO company, privately ran company that manages our military installation-based housing, right? The CEO is like in France. He has multiple homes throughout North America. He's on a yacht. He's like living the high life. But yet Sarah and her husband and her triplets are dealing with this kind of stuff. That does not seem right to me. That's where I get upset.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you watch the first staff hearing, they go through and they talk about how much money they made. Two of the companies made over $30 million, I believe.
$30 million, but meanwhile, your kids potentially have a lifelong illness. So as a service person, you're either looking at putting your 4 or 5 years in, getting your free college, or to get the benefit of TRICARE for the rest of your life, subjecting your family to this for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading too where these private companies were also getting essentially bonuses for, I guess, performing or servicing the housing, but there was no accountability and quality checks, and I guess one of the excuses from somebody in the military was that at the country was at a time when they were just too busy trying to ramp up and get military and go out to war and all that stuff, that they've just let this stuff just go. Meanwhile, you've got families whose kids may have suffered permanent brain damage because of lead poisoning, and that's the last thing that any parent wants to hear, right? Just sort of like, oops, we kind of forgot, we let things go. I mean, you've got to be accountable. Someone's got to be accountable, and these families need the care, and they need the protection, and they need things need to be done right.
Yeah, you touched on a good part. Yeah. You touched on a good part of that too. When we were talking about the guy coming out with the spray foam, I mean, they were literally judged on how quickly they completed the work order. I would imagine spraying some foam in a hole is probably,
minutes,
a quicker fix
minutes,
than get them increased profits.
Right. Yeah, and Sarah, you don't know this about me. Ruel does, but one of the, as a general group of people that I really don't like, those are landlords. What you're talking about is the same as private sector. I don't like landlords. I really don't cater to rental properties at all in any way, shape, or form. I don't like working in them because it's a tenant that don't care about the structure. So whenever I'm drying a house, you pay good money to prevent mold. Just my average, just dry out, just no frills, no special tricks. Just an average dry out bill is like $2,500 to $3,000, which is a drop in the bucket to the $5 to $15 a square foot that, when you have mold. So whenever I am working in a rental property, I come back. I should have you dried out in 3 to 5 days. Whenever I'm dealing with a rental property, the tenants need to watch TV tonight, and they turn off all my equipment. And it's like, okay, I turned it on at 8 a.m. today because you turned it off last night at 5 p.m. And I don't know that it's turned off because I'm there every day about 8 or 9 o'clock. And then so what takes 3 to 5 days takes, with the rental property, 7, 12, 14 days. And then I start getting problems from the insurance company saying, well, you should have had this dried out in 3 days. It's like, well, yeah, I would have, but I'm only drying for 8 hours a day. And then you got the landlord that really wants just a Band-Aid. Landlords really just want Band-Aids, whether it's private sector or military housing. I really do not like landlords as a general rule. I am not your carpet cleaner that's going to turn around and, go clean your carpet for $75 because your tenant moved out after they overhauled the transmission in their living room. I'm not that guy. You know what I'm saying? That's what I see in the private sector. And yet here we are talking about, every military installation base has thousands of families. And then you multiply it by mom and dad and kids, 1 to 7 kids or whatever, I mean, you start hitting thousands and thousands of people fast. So,
yeah, I mean, we have 3,400 people just in our group alone that have had these issues like he's talking about.
Yeah. So Sarah, we're kind of, I have some time, but I mean, what can Ruel and I do? What can our listeners do? What can we do to help these families?
I mean, we really at this point need to engage your legislators. We have some legislators that are really engaged and will even, do casework and help families. But we really need to let them know that we need legislation to fix this. That's the only way we're going to get a long-term fix. So write your local congressman, write your senators, let them know that this isn't okay, that you want this to be, their focus of attention is really what the outside public can do for us.
And you know what? I can tell you, Sarah, I don't know what he retired as. I just literally met with a Mold family. They can't live in their house. This is private sector. This is not base, okay? But I was talking to a retired Army guy, right? He's 68 years old and he just retired 4 years ago. So I don't know what that puts him, but he spent a lot of time there. He knew I was talking to him about what our servicemen and women are going through and the families and the housing and lead and mold. And he goes, oh man, if you want to sit and, cry, look at that. He goes, yeah, they should have never have gone private. They should have just kept it. And I'm more pro-business, more pro laissez-faire, more conservative. I'm not a big liberal, everybody gets everything free kind of guy. And if you look at everything that the government has imposed, they've always screwed it up. I mean, look at Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, and all that. And this guy's the same way. And it was like, wow, it's kind of eye-opening that here, like we hear about all the atrocities that our government, in the name of fixing things and making it perfect in a utopia, they screw it up 90% of the time. But he's like, they never should have gone private. They should have kept it with, government employees doing government work, fixing it and keeping the families safe. He goes, you're right. What our service people live with day in and day out should be shameful. And our Congress people should be crying and ashamed of themselves for putting you and your family and the others that we see in that group, putting your family into this kind of ridiculous, horrible atrocities. I mean, atrocities, when you talk to service people, you think more Rwanda and stuff like that. But I mean, that's maybe too strong of a word. I don't know. I mean, it's your family. It
is. Like every day I wake up and think that nothing can surprise me, that nothing will surprise me. It can't get any worse. And then I saw pictures of like a pile of dirt sitting in a home in a room that a family was still living in today, where they were doing something beyond the subfloor, fixing something, and the family was still living there. So I'll wake up and it'll be something new like that. And so I don't know what other word you use.
But it's atrocious. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And this is what our quote unquote free military housing gets us. So, Sarah, while you have a guy like me on the phone, do you have any mold, asbestos, lead type questions that you would like to have answered? You are one smart cookie. I know that.
I've gotten the experience of having guys like you, multiple, spend hours on the phone with me explaining mold and lead and asbestos. So I've gotten pretty decent thanks to all of y'all. I never meant to be the mold girl, that's for sure. My big question is the air quality controls. Like we saw some of those today, and when I see a control that's like 10 times higher than what's in the house, I just don't. That was one of my big questions. Like, how does that happen?
So, and if you're referring to the 2 to 5 messages that or pics that you've sent me and Craig,
yeah.
Richard Carpenter is another guy that I know, and Carl Grimes. Carl's a teacher, and he's way smarter than I am. I can follow directions. Basically, as a mold remediator, I just follow directions. I read, comprehend, and follow directions. That's essentially what I do in a nutshell. Carl can get very scientific with you.
Like a PhD lecture on the phone.
Probably. I don't know if he's a PhD, but he's smart, okay? And he teaches. So the photos that you've sent Craig and I in the last few days, I don't know exactly what control means. I'm assuming that's outside.
Yes, it was. From what
so indoor air quality is always benchmarked against outside. So to break that down, and I'm just making up random numbers here, but let's say you'll rarely, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Stachybotrys or Catonium in an outdoor air count. That's one mold spore of either one of those two in a post-test, and I have failed, okay? They're never on the outside, ever. They're always on the indoor. Unfortunately, mold grows between 65 and 85 degrees, and that's where everybody's home is sitting at, somewhere in that range at any time, day or night, 24/7, 365. So to help put this in perspective, let's say the control or the outdoor aspergillus count is 20,000, but your indoor count is 2,000. The indoor quality on aspergillus, and there's 3 million different mold spores, and each one actually has a different criteria, but that's the most prevalent. You want your indoor air to be less than 10% of the outdoor aspergillus count. So if you got 20,000 outside and you got even 2,000 inside, that's quote unquote fine. That's quote unquote good. We do not have firm standards on what's acceptable for everybody. So what I'm getting at is some quote unquote acceptable mold levels in your house can still be a trigger for that family, for that. And generally what I see, it's one individual, whether you got, 4 people in your family or 10 people in your family, it seems like one person will have a reaction to even that quote unquote 2,000 aspergillus count. And that's where guys like me, when we get bombarded, well, what do you think about this lab? It's kind of like, well, I don't know your medical history. I don't really know where you're at. And that's where I get kind of caught. That's why when you see me responding, I'm generally more vague because I don't want to give you a medical advice when I don't even know where you're at and is normal outside, is that a normal count for your area? I see my counts. I know that, this time of year, my aspergillus counts can be 60,000 aspergillus spores outside right now. And I've seen 1.2 million aspergillus inside. Obviously, they got a problem.
A big problem.
So the control, every lab that you see, every air sample lab that you see, it's always benchmarked against the outside. Every time you open your door, your garage door, come and go in and out, whatever, mow the yard. I mean, everything like that affects the outdoor count. If I mowed my yard today and I had a mold count, air sample taken outside, my aspergillus is going to go through the roof outside, which will then skew the real number for inside. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. Makes sense. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, a lot of these mold specialist air tester guys, they don't like, okay, so for example, today I was in a lower garage storage. It's mainly for lawnmowers and, just yard stuff, right? So I had a mold tester guy come in, he tested, and that area was off the charts. As I walked in, I said, "What is that?" And I pointed to this cover, and And the homeowner says, retired Army, by the way, same guy. He says, well, that's my pool cover. They're all winter, all fall, all spring. We just pulled it off a month ago. I said, we see all that green and brown and pollen and dirt and dust and everything? He goes, yeah. I said, that right there, you drag that piece of furniture contents outside, you've already automatically just lowered your spore count by thousands. He's like, really? So these mold expert specialist guys are coming in and they're doing testing. They don't pull their head out of their ass and think about, oh, I got a pool cover covered in green pollen. I'm going to have an obviously higher indoor mold count. And now he's telling me that to remediate this mold, I got to cut out all the sheetrock and get rid of all this stuff. And it's kind of like, dude, it's a pool cover. It's on the pool for 9 months out of the year. And then you mix in the stay-at-home mom with the sick child, and they got this expert telling this kind of stuff, and that's where I have a problem. It's kind of like I wish some of these guys could just be more realistic.
I think part of the issue too, even that we're running into, I just wish people would follow and they would make them follow the ICRC standards. That's where I get frustrated. You'll see them do something and I'll be like, that's not the standard. Well, the answer is, state laws don't say we have to follow. Like, can we just make it a rule where you have to follow them on the federal installations? Can we just make that a rule?
Well, that would make sense. But guess what, Sarah? There's no law in my world. Mold is a Wild West. There's no rule, no law, no nothing that says to be in this business, you have to be certified, you have to be trained, you have to be licensed. At least in my state now, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, places like that. Yeah, you got to be licensed, but I mean, you just pay your $50 or $100 or $1,000 fee and you're quote unquote licensed. There's no rule that says you have to be trained, you have to be qualified, you have to know what you're talking about. I literally could take a weekend course and become a mold expert. It's taken me 18 years to get to where I'm at, and I still don't know everything that there is to know about mold. That's
exactly the issue that we're having. So in our Residence Bill of Rights, when I said, are we getting anything done? This is what we're doing with legislation. It says, we have the right to have a professional come in and fix our maintenance issues. And it's like, well, in the mold industry, who are we calling a professional? Are we calling the guy that sat in the 3-day course a professional? Because that's not working right now.
No. And now, honestly, just because you're licensed with the IICRC doesn't mean you know what you're doing. That just means you passed a test and you paid a fee. So that's why guys like me and Craig and Richard Carpenter and Carl Grimes, those are the only ones that I know of that are industry specific. And I brought Craig in and Richard, and one of them brought in Carl. I don't know who else is in there, if there's any other professionals in there.
I think Al's in there. I think Al from South Carolina.
I don't know of an Al, but that don't mean nothing.
I think Craig may have brought him in.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And Craig's been around. I've been around 18 years. Craig's been around 23 or 26 years. And yet Craig and I are the same age, plus or minus a year. I'm 44, and I think he's 45 maybe. But anyway, neither here nor there. Craig has more experience than I do. I learned from Craig, actually. And I learned from Carl. And I know Richard, that sort of thing. But you're calling in these quote unquote experts, and you don't really know what you're getting. You're going off of Yelp and Google and I wish that's why I'm part of that group. Is kind of, I don't mind reaching out. I know people that know people, you know what I mean? I don't know every remediator in North America. But I know somebody that knows somebody. I can call a Mason Tomino or Travis Sodergen or Craig, and say, hey, I got somebody that needs some remediation work in your area. Who do you know? And they know who to. They're not putting their neck out. Just like any referral, you don't refer a plumber unless you know he does good work. Same with me. Same with all those guys. I may not know that guy, But if I get it from Mason or, there's about 12 people that I respect. And if they send me a name, then I'm going to say it's gold. I don't know their work. They might screw up, but they won't do you wrong, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's the hard thing too. Is we'll get someone at an installation. Like we've got a really, really good mold inspector up at West Point. I mean, I trust that company to steer me right. But then we'll get someone, in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and they're calling in another company, and we have no idea whether or not they do quality work. So it's like a trial by error. The first few families are the ones that, that's even if they can get a legitimate mold inspector. And a lot of times, we're just left to the maintenance men to take care of.
Well, and Sarah, as a general rule, so for an example, because I'm in this arena and I follow the rules and I play by the guidelines that are given to me and stuff, automatically my pricing is going to be higher than somebody that's not trained, not certified, don't follow the rules. So if you get a mold bid that's $10,000 and then you get somebody saying, "Oh, I can do that for $3,000," that's night and day difference. They're cutting major corners somewhere. Now, if I'm 10,000, somebody's 9,000. Now we're in spitting distance. We let's look, if I want that job, I can say, well, this is my justification for this extra $1,000, or, okay, yeah, you're right. I was trying to fluff and get, it is
a little bit more, yeah.
Right. But yeah, whenever somebody's like, well, Lonnie, your company is 10,000 and Joe over here, he's $3,000. What, you're raping me here. It's like, no, I'm following the rules. Now, Sarah, you know what? I know I could actually talk about this forever. Here's one thing I can tell you, and you can tell people, and if you want to, I will send you these links, and I would like for you to send me an email with all your contact and that sort of thing, how people can reach out to you if they have a need. But if you get anybody that's talking the word Goldmore or chlorine dioxide, whatever they call the brand name, that is not an appropriate mold remediation program. Essentially, in a nutshell, Goldmore is a multi-level. They're the Amway of mold remediation. Okay. Okay. Have you heard these? Have you heard chlorine dioxide or Goldmore?
No. Is this like the fogging business?
Yes, they're the fogging agent. I don't know if they're talking fogger, if they're talking like a ultra low volume fogger, or if they're talking about what I'm about to describe to you. Anything that's chlorine dioxide based, whether it's Goldmore or any other brand out there. Procure is that's a name brand that I can order, and I have ordered. It's great for cigarette smoke. It's great for certain odors. It's great for mold odors, but it will not kill mold. They'll tout it as, oh, this is a nanoparticle and it'll penetrate through the drywall and kill the mold that's inside the wall. And meanwhile, guys like me and Craig, we're like, wait, but what if you kill it? If it's still there, it's still toxic and allergenic. But it's literally, I can pay $37 and I can pay $37 and I can buy a packet of this chlorine dioxide, and it's supposed to, you drop it in 1 inch of water and off-gas it and fog the air for 6 or 8 hours or something like that. And you have to evacuate the house and all that jazz. But anytime you're hearing those words, they might be killing some mold, maybe, and they're definitely going to kill odor, but they're not removing the mold. And the only way to remove that mold is to physically cut and rip out the moldy drywall, set up your air filtration devices, set up negative pressures, positive pressures, all that jazz. And so anytime you hear anything like that,
we have people doing that. We've caught them and have had families come to us. I think out of Fort Campbell, we've heard of this. We're like, oh no, removal.
Well, it's very prominent. And so So here's how. All right. So I'm going to give you some inside scoop on this. Okay. If I'm $10,000 for a mold remediation, and I'm going to set my air scrubbers with HEPA filters and rip out all your drywall and HEPA vacuum everything and wipe everything down once, and all the stuff that I'm supposed to do according to training. If I'm $10,000, the whole marketing idea behind these foggers and anything chlorine dioxide is they literally come in and say, well, I can do it for $5,000. Okay. No. So as a business person, yes, I would love to charge you $5,000 for a 2,500 square foot house, and my cost of materials is going to be $350, and I pay a guy, $20 an hour, let's say, or whatever, to go in and set it in 1 inch of water, and then tell you to move out for a day and come back tomorrow, and that's good margins,
I even almost feel sorry for, the families and even these companies that are falling for that.
Well, but the people that are, the companies that are falling for that, they're not actually trained. They're not actually licensed. They don't have probably the right proper insurance. They don't know what they're talking about. And they're buying into this, I'm killing mold. Okay.
No.
But we already established that it's, 75% of the mold is already dead before it's ever sprayed, fogged, or whatever. So.
But those particles can still make you sick. So they've got to go.
Yep. Just as toxic, just as allergenic. And if you read the IICRC's S520, you've read that. And that's where guys like me, Craig, Richard, Carl, there's a few others that I've tried to get in. They're too busy to do quote unquote free work, but we're all just sitting here scratching our head. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not the smartest person in the world. I took chemistry in high school and college. I got the bare minimum, barely passing grade, and I wish so bad I paid more attention, because I didn't know 20 years later I was going to be living in a chemistry world. But so me as a person that's about to subject you and your twins to chlorine dioxide, I don't know how that interacts with VOCs from your new laminate floor that you just put in, the gasoline that your husband's storing for his lawnmower in the garage, how that interacts with the natural gas that's, supplying the heat to your house. I don't know what kind of residual is left behind. Chlorine dioxide sounds scary. It might be totally benign. It might not even be an issue. I don't know. I don't want to, as a father and a business owner, I don't want to make anybody sick. So I don't know how that interacts with the new carpet you just put in. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It goes.
Don't get me wrong.
Everything.
I have done it. I have done it. In fact, I did a test, Sarah. I actually built inside my shop, my warehouse here. I built a containment room, and I followed the Procure. That's one of the brands of chlorine dioxide. I followed their protocol that they lay out for us. I literally paid my money, and I did 2 variations of it. It did not work. I have documentable lab results, air sample. I worked with my industrial hygienist. He did the lab work for free. I followed their protocol, and it cut the mold spores. This particular room that I built, I think I had 200,000 mold spores in there when I started. And after I did their procedure, I had 180,000 spores. So it dropped it by 20,000. And I think that was literally just me hauling the wet, moldy dog food and cardboard and everything out of this containment room. I think just moving that out of the room dropped it by 20,000. I don't think this Procure did squat
on it. Oh, that's a shame. That's the part that's the issue is, are we going to call a company that's using those practices professionals Is that what we're going to call professionals for these military families when it comes to our Bill of Rights? Is to have a company doing that come in and say that that's okay?
Well, if you can get language added that says that they need to follow IICRC or IAQ, those are the two biggies, and they're real similar. IICRC actually has ANSI standards put in place, which to get an ANSI standard, they say it's really hard
for a year.
Yeah, right. So, and it's researched and it's benchmarked against everything known to man, and that's our standard. That's the standard I follow. IAQ, I'm assuming is pretty similar, but I do know for a fact they're not ANSI certified.
Right. I mean, that's our big push, and that was some of the suggestions that we gave to legislators. At one point, they were talking about a universal building and codes regulation for these military privatized homes. And it's like, well, there's already one written for mold and water damage. We just use this. This is what the legitimate professionals use in the industry.
And unfortunately, it comes with a price. If I'm paying 8 guys to go gut your basement, guess what? I can't do that for $3,000. It's just not possible.
You keep saying gut your basement. What's interesting is right now we are 8 weeks out of our home. And I had about, I would say, 1,000 square foot basement they just redid, and a bunch of other areas. I think I had 7 rooms affected, and you keep saying this basement, and all I can think about is my basement and how much that must have cost.
Yeah. But you didn't have to pay for it. It was free, right? Just kidding.
No. No. That's the thing. So these companies are spending all this money. I'm sure. I'm guessing that the job they just did on my home was probably somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. And if they would have just fixed the roof leak and the basic moisture problems right the first time.
Yeah, that $3,000 to $12,000 roof is a drop in the bucket considering what they just spent in mold remediation.
Yep, exactly.
And then they got to put all the drywall and everything back in. That's another $20,000, $30,000.
And they're having to pay for us to be out of the home in a hotel or in a hospitality suite, pay for our food while we're gone.
Yep. That's why I don't like landlords. They would rather wait until it's a gaping, hemorrhaging life or death situation than to just put a $10,000 roof on the house. They just want your rent. That's all they want is your rent. That's it.
When I lived in Brazil, we had a roof leak the entire time we lived in that home, and they never fixed it correctly the entire time, these full 18 months.
And let me guess, what attempts they did make involved a tube or maybe 6 tubes of caulk and some flashing, and that only works for about a month. You might have had a month gap. Yeah.
It was a lot of flashing. Like I would probably say probably at least 3 times of flashing, and then it was terracotta roof. They find the tiles. It finally took off half the roof, and then they still messed it up and didn't fix the problem. I'm out of that house.
Still left all that wet framing and sheeting wet underneath it. They might have replaced some sheeting, but not enough. And then all that wet insulation that just holds the moisture. Attics, everybody thinks, oh, it's hot. It'll dry. No, wet attics don't dry very well. And then you got all that wet insulation sitting against the ceiling joists on the plaster or drywall, and it does not go away. It blows my mind. So.
Oh yeah, my attic was done too in the house that I'm talking about that I'm out of right now. They had to do the attic, and the attic, I mean, I'm really one of the lucky ones. I have one of the bigger homes on the installation.
Ooh, look at you, Sarah.
It was luck of the draw for my husband's right band. It's probably the nicest we've ever lived in, minus all the environmental issues and leaks. Like they even went in and had remodeled it and everything. They just did not take care of the moisture intrusion problem.
That's a landlord for you right there.
It's hard, and it's hard to complain about such a nice home that it's still making you sick.
Well, maybe your husband needs to make it to the rank of general, and then he can get the nicest house on the base.
Their homes are affected too. That's the horrible thing that I found out in the past 3 or 4 years, talking to different people. This sees no rank. I mean, one day you'll have, I'll have brand new first duty station soldier contact me. The next day it'll be a colonel's wife. And I know of several generals that have had major issues in their homes, like the ones we're describing.
Mm-hmm.
The companies see no rank.
What is your husband's rank?
He is a captain right now. He was an E7 on the enlisted side, and then he commissioned to the dark side. So he's a captain right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. The funny thing is, our nice, great, awesome, moldy house, too, the big one, it's actually in an enlisted neighborhood. Like, we asked, hey, can we please go live in the enlisted neighborhood? We really like this house. We asked them not to give us anything that had mold. We said we were allergic. We had just moved out of a mold house. So it's the one we got.
And here we are.
And here we are, 8 weeks and counting.
And how many more?
They have no idea. From everything that I understand, I think we're probably at least another 5 to 6 weeks. They just finished remediation, and they found another puddle, and they don't know where the water source was in this basement. They just finished remediating today.
Well, you could fly me out. I can bring my infrared camera, and I can find it for you in 30 seconds.
See where it was weird. It was almost like it was coming in from outside through the garage up into the basement, and the house had been empty for 5 days waiting on a mold report, and no one went to go look at it. So
yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of these restoration professionals, mold remediation professionals, they don't invest. I got one of my cameras. The baseline is $2,000, and you can spend $15,000-$20,000 for an infrared camera. I wish I had $20,000 to spend on a camera, because you can see a lot. But a lot of these guys will go in, they'll do a mold inspection, they'll do a moisture inspection, and they rely on their old school moisture meter. And I've been around long enough. We didn't have infrared cameras when the basic, the throwaway $2,000 one is considered disposable. And they were $25,000 when they first came out. And so nobody had them. And now that they're quote unquote disposable at $2,000, they still don't have them. And it's like, how are you playing in this technological age and walking in blind to this environment? It gives a lot of false readings. So, I mean, just because it's blue does not mean it's water. So I still got to put my moisture meter in there to say beep, beep, beep. Yep, it's wet. So these cameras they are flawed. I've literally cut out a wall. Everything told me that it was wet there, and I cut out a section of this wall, and the insulation had just had settled like 6 or 8 inches. But it was right near the water source. I mean, every indication was it was wet, and I literally cut this out, and it's like, oh, that's why it was wet. And I did my diligence. I put my meter in there, and it was dry, but that doesn't mean water's not running behind in the insulation. So long story short, they are infallible, but man, they make it so much easier. If you see blue in the middle of a ceiling, a vaulted ceiling, you're like, oh, I need to get up to that spot and verify that it's not just missing insulation. You still got to do your homework. You still got to know how to read a moisture meter. Moisture meter is about, $1,500, but you still got to have them. And then these guys are out there without a camera. They're walking in blind, and they're not even seeing the wet ceiling on the vaulted, 20-foot peak. And right there it is, but I can do it in 30 seconds from the ground without setting up a ladder or scaffolding or whatever to get up there. And
that's the other thing. We were talking about what they're doing, like with these inspections. You want to talk about the dust? That's not mold. This is just dust that you see or hear. And we don't send anything to the lab. Have you heard that from our group?
I have. I've seen those. Yeah, and I can't comment on everyone. I comment on 1 out of 10 that I see, because I just don't always have the time. but the dust or mildew. Mildew is another one. Oh, that's not mold. That's mildew. No, that's mold. Mold does not grow on, or mildew does not grow on sheetrock. That is on a living plant. It's not on paper drywall. It's mold. There's no foo-foo that's going to wipe mildew off the bathroom wall.
Mm-hmm. I think that's like that was like the big one. That was like my favorite excuse that I used to hear was, no, that's mold, or that's mildew, not mold. Or my new favorite one is, we only do visual mold inspections. That's only my new favorite one. Yeah. We don't send anything to the lab. We only do visual mold inspections. And my absolute new favorite one is, we don't use indoor air quality at all. You can never get an indoor air quality test.
Wow. So you as a renter, if you want to buck up, and around here, it's $500 to $1,500 to get an air test. And if you don't have that kind of money, what do they do?
Nothing. There's nothing to do. Here, we spent $1,200 out of pocket for ours. We're in an expensive part of the country. But to ask someone, like when we're talking about how much these people, sometimes have one or two kids that are on the lower enlisted side are taking home for paycheck, you're asking, for a fourth of their month's pay for a mold inspection.
Wow.
I mean, sometimes more than that. Depends where you're at.
Wow. Do service people get paid based on where they're at? I mean, if I was just enlisted boot camp, I'm fresh out of boot camp, do I get paid the same whether I'm in Missouri or Washington or New York or anywhere? I mean, is it the same? Yeah,
it's the same. Your BAH, like your housing allowance fluctuates depending on the area.
That's the only thing
that money
that
they'll give you.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if you're overseas, they'll give you this thing called COLA. So if you're in Hawaii where everything is horribly expensive, like they'll give you a certain allowance, but we're not talking about very much. I mean, it's just enough because your gallons of milk cost $6 instead of $2,
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Well, Sarah, I have to switch gears. I have to put on my dad hat, and it's after probably 5 o'clock your time. And is there anything else you'd like to say? I do want you to email me. I'll text you my email and stuff. I do want your contact to put it out, and you put this in the group or whatever, if you're so inclined. I'll put it out to my platforms and that sort of thing. But anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, let me go ahead and give that number for the health registry. And so the health registry, if you've ever had problems in your in a military housing home, you're supposed to call this number. It's 1-800-984-8523 to register your home and your health problems.
And so they just call that, and they just give their rank and their address and where they're at?
Yeah, they give social security numbers. I mean, it's run through the government. So this is like a government-led, a military-led initiative to try to track these issues and see where they're at and how many people they have sick. And my hope would be that they'll use this registry one day to help with continuing health care costs for people that were identified as sick due to their
Good. And we need that. Your 8-year-olds don't deserve to live another 85 years sick.
And that's the lucky part. Like, we've gotten lucky. It's me that's mostly affected in my house, and my son. But I mean, the amount of people that I know that have long-term issues. I mean, I think that the general public would be disgusted by it.
And Sarah, I'm sure you probably ran across this protocol, but listeners, if they have a mold illness, mold sickness, they need to, I don't have the website handy offhand, Google the shoemaker protocol. Have you heard of that term?
Yep.
They need to find a certified shoemaker protocol doctor that understands mold. They're the only ones that I have found that knows what a mold illness truly looks like. Unfortunately, mold illnesses can look like 1,000 other ailments, and doctors generally just want to push a pill on you, and there's usually more involved. It's, usually environmentally based, and you don't just push a pill on an environmentally sick person. So, shoemaker protocol is that protocol. So, well, with that, I don't know if Ruel's sitting on mute or not, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Before you hang up, don't do like Craig, our friend Craig, that just hangs up. I want to say goodbye to you for a minute off the air. But everybody that's listening to this, okay. Well, you want to wrap this up then, Ruel?
Sure. Let's see. So jump in if I get any of this information wrong. We have been talking to Sarah Kline. Is that right? And
you got it.
She's a military housing advocate, and she does work with the Military Housing Advocacy Network.org. The number that she recited earlier regarding how did you describe it? Housing registry. 800-984-8523. Is that right?
Yeah, you've got it.
Awesome. So that's Sarah Kline. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate the opportunity to let the public know kind of what's going on, and also let other industry professionals know what's going on the installation, probably closest to them.
Yeah, this hits home. I mean, we all know a service person. We all have somebody in the family or a neighbor or somebody that's in the military or has shipped off. So with that, I'd like to say this is Lonnie Beecham with Restore It Restoration, and I'd like to let you know to get your life back to normal and do your part. Call your congressman today and tell them you need this Bill of Rights passed for our servicemen. With that, thank you very much.
They'll get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It Restoration.
I'm the first one here. Let me call our guest. Let's see if she's ready. Let's add a call. All right. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, your big, long, wordy email, I sent you a text thing or a test email and it bounced back, and I was like, screw it, I'll just call her, and we can still do it this way instead of you dialing in and stuff like that. I haven't heard from Craig. Have you?
No, I haven't heard from him.
I haven't either. So anyway, so just so you know, I don't know if you've listened to my podcast at all. It's a Service Guys podcast is what it's called. Me and my friends, my tradesmen friends, we get together and just kind of chat war stories and, talk about our business and that sort of thing. And I generally ask, one of my HVAC friends or somebody a funny story and, go from there. But since we're not talking about a funny story, I just thought, bring you on and give you the platform. We have a very conversational type recording. I don't have a script. I'm going to, kind of introduce you and kind of give you the floor and let you tell us all about military housing and the advocacy group and the Facebook group. And, and then whatever you say, me and or Ruel will bounce in and, ask you a follow-up question or something along that line. And then give you, I give you an opportunity to ask a guy like me any kind of questions that you'd like. And did I see that you went to work, or did I hear something about you went to work for Belfour?
No, not me.
Okay.
Absolutely not. That would be not
Belfour Betty, Belfour the Restoration Company.
No, they need someone though. Good gracious, up here.
Yeah. So until Ruel kicks on, I guess we could kick this thing off. But let me ping him real fast and text him, and just because I want to kick this thing off and then have him cut in right in the middle and say hello, or something silly. So, are you ready? He must be dialing in because it's going green instead of blue. So Sarah, I still have your number. I don't know if you had me programmed or not. I learned years ago in the business world, like, just capture everybody's phone numbers because you never know when you might need a favor or need to call them or ask a question or anything like that. So I did program you from when we spoke in January or March or February, whenever that was.
I had yours too. I have learned that lesson the hard way several times with all the families that I work with. I'll talk to someone and it's, oh my goodness, 2 months later, I'll get a text message.
Yeah. And you're like, who is this? And with everybody in this Facebook, it's a love-hate thing for me. I have made great friends all around this world, and I do call and talk to people all over the place. But if I don't save their number, then I'm like, who am I getting this text from Ontario, Canada, or whatever? Oh, yeah.
Well, in military, it's even worse because everyone's already moved so many times.
Yeah, and you're not from where you got your original phone from.
No, none of us are.
Where are you actually, you and your husband, from?
So we're from Oklahoma City, both of us. And so our phones are still out of Oklahoma City, but we're living in New York right now.
And that's a 405 area code, right?
Yep.
Yep. And you're a stay-at-home parent?
Yes. I went back to school when they were 3 or 4, but we've moved, or when they were 2, but we've moved so many times since then. I think we're on our 5th house in probably about 5 years.
Oh, well, leave it in the box. It makes the next trip easier.
Yep.
So you still have all the wicker furniture? Because you only get so many pounds to move, right?
Yeah, I think we get 14,500 pounds, and we're over the max weight. So we had to pay last time over $1,000.
Oh, wow. That's still cheaper than most.
Yeah.
And how many kids do you have?
We have triplets that are 8 years old. Yeah.
That is a full-time job. I'm a horrible stalker. I know we're Facebook friends and stuff like that, but I'm a horrible stalker. So, Ruel is texting me telling me that he's on, but he must be on mute. So,
hello.
Hey, Ruel.
Howdy. How's everybody doing?
Good. So, Ruel, just so you know, I've told you I'm part of some Facebook group, Military Housing Advocacy, and I've been telling you that the mold and cockroaches and water damage and lead and asbestos and everything that our servicemen have to live through, and they get free housing, but I wouldn't wish this. I would not wish their housing situation on a down and out crackhead. So I thought I'd bring Sarah on, and I was hoping to bring our old friend Craig Hubbard on, and so we're just kind of catching up and actually kind of getting to know each other. Sarah and I have spoken a time or two on the phone, and she's an admin of a military housing group, and I just contribute and field a ton of messenger photos. It's like, I can't tell squat from that. That doesn't look bad to me, but whatever. So
very cool.
So here we all are.
Hi, Sarah.
All right.
Hi.
Oh yeah, this is Sarah Kline with a long email. So don't even. I was gonna send it to you, and I couldn't even figure it out myself. Military Advocacy Group work something .org something. I don't know.
Military Housing Advocacy Network.org.
Yeah.
That's the worst mold you've ever seen.
Right. So I was just kind of catching her up on, the platform is very conversational. I told her I'm going to give her pretty much free reign. You and I will chime in and ask a follow-up question. But, this needs to get out there, and people need to one of the running jokes I see in this Facebook group is people say, but you get free housing. And I'm not joking, Ruel. I've never shared photos with you, but man, is this atrocious. Well, now that we kind of got some of this backstory out of the way, Ruel, I'm going to let you kick this podcast off, and I'm going to let you close it out today as well. So,
okay.
This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production,